let's meet our great panel to begin with. On behalf of Chinonye Chukwu's Clemency, in which she plays a prison warden haunted by the execution she has been compelled to preside over, please welcome the Oscar-nominated and Emmy-winning actress, Alfre Woodard. On behalf of Stephen Merchant's Fighting With My Family, in which she plays a British amateur wrestler who is offered the opportunity to come to America and compete for a spot in the WWE, and Ari Aster's MIDSOMMAR, in which she plays a grieving young woman whose trip with a group of friends to a compound in Sweden turns into a nightmare. Please welcome the actress Florence Pugh. On behalf of Trey Edward Schultz's Waves, in which he plays the hard-ass patriarch of a family thrust into crisis after one of its members commits a terrible mistake, please welcome the Emmy-winning actor Sterling K. Brown. On behalf of Kenny Leon's American Son, in which she plays the panicked mother of a biracial child who has gone missing and may be in jeopardy, please welcome the Emmy-winning actress Kerry Washington. On behalf of Lulu Wang's The Farewell, in which she plays a young Chinese-American woman asked to join the rest of her family in hiding a terminal cancer diagnosis from her grandmother in China, please welcome the actress Nora Lum, a.k.a. Aquafina. On behalf of Joe Talbot's The Last Black Man in San Francisco, in which he plays a lifelong resident of the titular city who dreams of reclaiming a grand home that his grandfather constructed and he grew up in before gentrification changed everything, please welcome the actor Jimmie Fails. On behalf of Cassie Lemon's Harriet, in which she plays the slave-turned-Underground Railroad hero, Harriet Tubman, please welcome the Tony-winning actress and Grammy-winning singer, Cynthia Erivo. And last but certainly not least, on behalf of Scott Z. Burns's The Report, in which he plays President Obama's Chief of Staff, Dennis McDonough, while a Senate staffer investigates the CIA's post-9/11 use of torture, please welcome the Emmy-winning actor, John Hamm. We have done this, and by the way, thanks, John, for coming at 6 a.m. after doing SNL last night. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. You're all welcome.
So I would like to begin by asking each of you just how you came to the roles that you're representing here today. Alfre, if we can begin with you, you have said in the past, quote, "If I know I can do something, there's no need to do it, you know? Or if I've done it before, there's no need to do it," close quote. I assume that you had not ever seen anything quite like this prison warden that you played before.
No, and as a matter of fact, hi everybody. As a matter of fact, I was drawn to Chinonye Chukwu's script and idea because I had never heard of that class of people. I knew there were wardens, I knew there were people who administrated state-sponsored execution, but I was usually on the other end, signing petitions, chanting, doing that. And so to know that there was a human being, and that human being is someone who could be in my family. There were people that came from mental health, people that came from social work to be wardens, and they actually walk people through the process that we pay for, hopefully to give them some dignity on their way out. And I just thought, if I am in my 6th decade and I'm an educated woman and I've been politically active since I was 14, and I didn't know that, we need to get this story out. And people can do with it what they want, but you just always want to keep, as artists, we want to keep bringing the truth forward as much as possible.
Florence, you really blew up with the film Lady Macbeth a couple years ago, got a BAFTA nomination. I think from that came this insane year for you with 2 indies that are represented here today, Fighting With My Family and MIDSOMMAR, and then also another studio film, which is coming very soon, I believe Christmas Day, Little Women, which people may have heard about. So just can you connect the dots from, I think Fighting With My Family not only came out first, but was the first thing to really come out of the success of Lady Macbeth, right?
Totally, yeah. Fighting With My Family, even though it came out this year, we shot years ago. So it's been really sweet, I suppose, to see what I've been working on and in terms of career, what the trajectory of that ends up being. And Fighting With My Family was the second proper film that I auditioned for after Lady Macbeth that went well and was a pretty cool story to tell.
And then was it, I think it was during like a break from that or something that MIDSOMMAR crossed your radar?
I was actually filming Little Drummer Girl in Athens at the time, and we had just done a night shoot where we were shooting on the Acropolis. And I went home, and Ari was up, and I was supposed to be Skyping him that evening. So I hadn't slept for I don't know how many hours. And I remember it was the first time, obviously, as there's many times when you Skype people in your work, and you have to be so careful about what you say, or if you actually want to do the project, you can't actually tell them that you want to do the project. You have to be very polite about it. Be like, well, the big people will talk, and then we'll sort out the scheduling later. But I was so tired, and Ari was so stressed that by the end of this Skype, I essentially was like, Ari, I don't want to play games. I want to do your film. So can you tell me if you want me to do the film too? And he was like, oh, great, me too, because they told me I couldn't tell you that I wanted you, but I do, and that's really great to hear. So I hung up, and I remember a bit like when you finish watching an episode on Netflix, the screen went black, and I was like, oh, shit, what have I done? But yeah, so it was odd, but it was all wonderful.
Nice. Sterling, you
What's up, man? Talk a little Frozen 2, a little indie that could. Let's do it. I hope it finds an audience. I really do. I appreciate you guys showing up to
I've seen
champion this film.
You are fantastic in it, you know?
Thanks, buddy.
So you are probably known to the most number of people for playing one sort of a dad, a very a good dad in This Is Us. Not good is the wrong. I don't want to contrast that with the dad you play in Waves. It's just
Sure.
a very different, well-meaning dad. How did you end up? I mean, I think probably there are some filmmakers in the audience who would like to know how someone who at the time was maybe 29, 30 convinces Sterling K. Brown to be in only his 3rd feature film. Took a leap of faith on your part.
Man, that didn't sound like a really well thought out thing when you put it that way. So I was shooting This Is Us when they were about to go into production for Waves. My manager said, you got to check out this script. I was like, do I have time to do something? He's like, if you like it, we'll try to figure it out. So I read it, and it was a family drama, you know, a upper middle class African-American family with a unique set of problems that I don't typically see on camera. There's this really complicated, lovely relationship between this father and son, where this father pushes him very hard because he wants to see him succeed and wants to see him excel. But he doesn't always, it's tough love, right? It doesn't always feel loving to his son. And I was really interested in exploring what it means to love in that way. And then there's a tragedy that transpires halfway through the film, and then the family has to figure out a way to come back together. And there's learning that transpires in the father, where you see that this tough exterior that he felt was the only way to properly arm his children to face this world as being black in America is not the only way, that you learn as much through sensitivity, through vulnerability, as you do through this quote unquote outwardly shown strength. And so I had concerns because this young black man, played by Kelvin Harrison Jr., brilliantly in the film, goes through some really serious stuff. And I wanted to make sure that we weren't putting an image into the world, another negative stereotype of a young black man where people would be willing to write him off, but saw him as a beautiful human being that took a wrong turn and made a devastating mistake. And I think my fear was the thing that ultimately led me to do the film, because I was terrified for Kelvin. I was like, hey man, once you do this movie and people see it, like I know it's a wonderful artistic experience, but it's not yours anymore. Like it belongs to them and they can interpret it however they want to. And I had a conversation, he goes, yeah, it's tough, I know, but it's a really good part, right? And I was like, yeah, young brother, it's a really good part. I think it's good. And then he hit me with, well, should I not do it just because I am black? And I was like, oh, shit, you flipped it on me, you know what I'm saying? And so I realized that the thing that I was scared about was exactly the reason why I should do the film, because the fears that the father had for his son were similar to the fears that I had for him as an actor. So that's it. Yeah.
Kerry, you and the same 3 actors who you share this film with and the same director first did this production on Broadway. I was lucky to see it there and you know, very well received there, but not a ton of people are able to be in New York, or even if they are, to afford to go to see a show on Broadway. So can you just explain how and why almost, I think it was exactly a year to the date of rehearsals beginning, we ended up with a film premiering at the Toronto International Film Festival, same group, and I think, I guess just to sort of maybe set up an answer, I think you know, this was one of the first things you did coming off of Scandal, and I wonder if it was in any way a cause-effect, like let's do something different, or let's do some, you know, why this was what appealed to you.
Yeah, thank you for coming to see us in New York. I think when I read the script, I was really drawn by this character because she was in many ways the anti-Olivia Pope. She didn't, you know, I spent 7 seasons kind of walking around always being the most powerful person in the room. And in this production, this woman spends 90 minutes trying to have some sense of agency and control in order to find her kid. I also think in hindsight, you know, we made a decision, the writers made a decision on Scandal to never have Olivia Pope have children. She got pregnant, had an abortion, and I realized that there is a inescapable vulnerability that comes with parenting as a black person. To parent black children requires a level of vulnerability and anxiety and fear that Olivia Pope could not afford and remain Olivia Pope. So it was an opportunity for me to explore. I myself had become a mom in those 7 seasons, and this was a chance for me to explore all of that. But I think how we became a film was really because I come from theater and from indie film. I started in indie film, but I've spent a lot of time in the like cushy, cozy world of network television since then. And my production company is set up as a shingle under Disney and ABC. So as a producer, I've been a creative producer, and I'm not a figurehead producer. I am a roll up my sleeves kind of producer, but I hadn't had to ask people for money. And when the producers came to me with this play, they said, we'd love for you to be on board. And I said, that's great, but I'm at a point in my career where if I'm gonna do something, I really need to produce. And they said, great, you can help us raise money. And I was like, oh, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not gonna ask people for money. I'm gonna like give you notes on the script. And they were like, no, in Broadway, if you wanna be a producer, you have to raise the money. And so I was out there pitching this play, and you know, most of my experience up until that point pitching in that way had been for film and television. And so as I was making these phone calls to financiers and friends and family pitching the play, I realized there was a movie here. And I realized that we could tell this story in a much bigger scale. And it's been really special because when we were doing the play, people on social media were like, I live in Brazil and we have these issues in Brazil, and I live in Paris and we have and now, you know, it's the great democratization of theater to be able to bring stories like this to a platform like Netflix in a cinematic way has allowed a global audience that, I mean, you know, if a half of 1% of Netflix subscribers tunes into our film, it will be 20 times a Broadway audience if we sold out the whole run. Yeah. So it's been really special.
Aquafina, you are primarily known prior to the farewell for music, including the instant classic My Vag from 2012, and also for comedies. There were two landmark ones from 2018, the all-Asian Crazy Rich Asians and the all-female Ocean's 8. Big hit studio movies. So how, after that, and having never really, to my knowledge, done drama, do you wind up in a indie drama for working with this young filmmaker, Lulu Wang?
Wow. I still can't believe you called My Vag an instant classic. Tell that to my old booking agent, am I right? You know, I don't know. You know, I think when I first got the script for The Farewell, we had just finished filming Ocean's 8, so it was at a time where, you know, I didn't know what was next. You know, when I got it, I read it, and I knew two things: one, that I'd never done drama, and two, that I cannot speak Chinese because I didn't grow up speaking it. And the script was largely in Chinese and was very dramatic. And I was like, okay, yikes. But no, what I did know about the script, however, is that, you know, technicalities aside, I related to what Billy was going through, and I had related to her and felt her in a way that I'd never felt a character. And I'd also never seen a relationship like, you know, between a grandparent, not even just, you know, an Asian grandparent, but a grandparent and a granddaughter displayed in that way.
And there, you know, is a sort of a personal connection on a few different
Yeah.
levels, right?
Yes.
I mean, you were raised by your grandma.
I was raised by my grandma. I lost my mom when I was 4 years old, and so when I read the script, you know, that bond, it felt very real. So I think that's what drew me to it.
And
Yeah.
that sense of also, I guess you've talked about, I think you were in college when you went to China, spent some time there, and
Yeah.
realized that I think that you really can be caught between two cultures. Right?
Yeah, I think that you know, the struggle between any, you know, Dash American is one that you grow up feeling and being told that you're not American, and then you go over there and you feel like a stranger as well, and it's something that yeah, I think that it's hard to, you don't often see it talked about. So yeah.
Jimmie, in your film, the first in which you played a leading role in a feature-length film, you are playing a guy named Jimmie, and I don't think that the similarities stop there. Can you just explain, this has been a long evolution with this project, and if you can just share how it started and, you know, the various incarnations leading up to a feature film that is set in San Francisco.
Yeah, well, it really, me and Joe, the director, Joe Talbot, is my best friend, and I've lived with him for years, and I still live with him, actually. But we've always just been making movies together since we were kids, honestly. Like, we did a movie, but we were always making them without scripts. So at one point, we thought that we could make Last Black Man without a script until Barry Jenkins was like, yeah. You know, like, and we wanted to shoot it on Technicolor. We were very obviously new to this filmmaking thing, but no, yeah, we always were making movies just based off stuff that was happening in our lives, and we just literally were just on a walk talking, and we, you know, got to talking about family history, stories, and whatever, and it was just kind of like a joke. Like, when I was like 17, we were just like, oh, you make a movie about your life, you know, and it was just literally a joke. And I went away for college for a year, and then I came back. College didn't work out, wasn't for me. And we both were in like a weird kind of depressed sort of state, because his best friend left, and his girlfriend had also left, and I was out in New York, like, alone, you know. And I think just being in that household, that's when I moved in with him and his family, and they're all artists. So I think just being in that household around each other, it eventually just started to. So how it began was we did a concept trailer of me narrating the original story of my grandpa having the house and all that. And when we put that out, we put it on Vimeo, people started to reach out to us and tell us that they wanted to help us make this story. So then we, you know, formulated like a small team of all people who we work with still today. And we did a Kickstarter, and then we raised money that way. And then we ended up meeting with Time Warner through a small company, 150, and we did a short film, American Paradise. I'll try to get you that link. And yeah, we did that, and we went to Sundance in 2017 with the short, and we were promoting Last Black Man when we were there, because that's the movie that we really wanted to make, but we wanted to have experience like shooting an actual movie and not just like some youth film, you know. So, and we met Christina O at Plan B there, and then once we met Plan B, it was just kind of just started to happen. Then they brought on A24, and they was like, oh, okay, you guys ready to shoot in a month? We were like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. You know, even though it took so long, but yeah, it really was just, you know, we've always been making movies. That's all, you know, we've been doing all our lives.
Thanks. Cynthia, when you heard about this project, you were, which I think also first leading role in a big film, and first narrative film ever made about Harriet Tubman, which is hard to believe. You were in the middle of performing another part, the one that made everyone sit up and take notice of you. I think maybe for most of us, the first time, The Color Purple on Broadway, musical version. How did it even kind of wind up at your doorstep here? We should remind folks you're British.
Yes.
I don't know how well known among even Americans, sadly, Harriet Tubman is. Maybe was she someone that you were even aware of in growing up?
Yeah, it's actually only recently that I've become aware that a lot of British people don't know Harriet Tubman, but in my school we were taught about her. But it's that very general paragraph that tells you about what she did and who she was, and that she was part of the Underground Railroad. She did the Run to Freedom, and she came back and saved many enslaved people. That's kind of, it's like broad strokes. But that's what I knew about her. But it made me hungry to know about her because she was essentially the only woman of color in my history book. So she was a hero of mine because I didn't know that we existed in that form. But when I was doing The Color Purple, my brain was very much in Seeley land, and I was learning about her and playing her and trying to tell her story. And I didn't realize that Daniela Tappen-Lumberg and Deborah Martin Chase had come to see the show. So they had decided that when they saw the show that they wanted to have a conversation with me, and I found out maybe a week later, and I sat with Deborah at the Mandarin Oriental, and we had tea, and she was talking about the script that she had for maybe at that time for about 7 years. The script itself was written 20 years ago, and she was raring to go. If you've met Deborah, when she's determined to do something, she's determined to do something, and that's it. And she had decided that she wanted to tell this story, and that she knew it was the first time that we were going to see her on the big screen this way. And she felt like there was something special about a woman of color in a period piece, action-led, who was inspirational. And then she then said, I think you might be great for the part. And I was like, okay. Okay. But I also understood that there was a real responsibility to get her seen. I didn't want her or anyone else to wait to see this woman anymore. So I, at that point, put the hat on and was like, okay, I'm here if you want me, and I'm ready to do whatever it takes to make this happen. We didn't film it till last year, so it took about 2-3 years to get here. So it's a journey.
It's a journey, yeah.
It's been a journey.
Yeah. John, Scott C. Burns is someone who has been well known for a while as a screenwriter. This is his first directorial effort. And I think that you guys first crossed paths about an unrelated script of his, right? And just how did it come to be that, I guess you learned that this project was something he was looking to do for his first film as a director?
Yeah, Scott had directed a few things in television world, a TV movie and a couple episodes here and there, but this was his first endeavor into feature filmmaking. And I remember getting the script, and the title at that point was called The Torture Report, and I was like, well, this will be fun. This will be a laugh riot of 90 minutes of entertainment. But I was incredibly surprised. I wasn't really surprised. I knew Scott's incredible talent as a writer, but I was surprised at how effectively he did make this story compelling. what could have been sort of a dry, listless, horrifying kind of list of atrocities that our government went through, ended up becoming a real kind of hero story of this guy, Dan Jones, who was tapped by Dianne Feinstein to compile this report. This 7,600-page report with 48,000 footnotes, all completely, researched, and it's all coming from the CIA's own files. It's an incredible story, and it's a story about accountability, which I feel like we're in a bit of an accountability gap these days. So it's nice to see a story about government at that level where it works to an extent. And that's what I thought was kind of important about the script. My character in it plays kind of both sides of the aisle out of necessity. But one of his lines is democracy is messy. But when it's done, when everybody performs what they're contractually obligated to do, the contract being the Constitution of the United States, it works. It doesn't work perfectly, but it works.
Thank you. I think before we go any further, we should maybe just define terms of today when people talk about an independent movie, to use the standard of the Film Independent Spirit Awards, they're saying $22.5 million or less. I just wonder if we can quickly go down the line. Maybe this time we'll start with John. If you happen to know or recall how many days you guys shot and also what the budget was, because I think it's going to blow a lot of people's minds. I'm actually going to say we skipped Kerry until the end because that's a crazy story in and of itself. But just, John, if you happen to know.
We shot for 24 days, and I don't know the exact budget, but it was significantly less than $22.5 million, at least judging by my paycheck.
Right. Cynthia?
I think we shot for 42 days and we had 17 million.
We shot for 25 days. We had 2.3 million.
It's 5 times 7.
35
Yep. days. And I don't remember, Andrew, my producer, the producer from The Farewell's here. How much was it, Andrew? About 3 million.
Wow. Sterling?
In the 40s. In the 40s, under 22.5 by a lot. Frozen actually could qualify.
Craft services budget,
in a
maybe.
similar fashion. No, I don't know the specifics, so don't get me in trouble. Yeah.
Equally, I have no idea, but the one that you mentioned at the beginning, Lady Macbeth, we shot for 3 weeks for $250,000. Wow. And that was the most nuts thing ever.
That's independent.
There you go. We were doing every job.
Right. Alfre?
I was one of those executive producers that was involved, but not with finding the finance. So I don't know what it was, but it was under $4 million. It might have been under 2.
And it was a pretty quick shoot.
17 days.
Yeah. Okay, so now, Kerry, let's just preface this by saying you did perform.
We rehearsed it for 4 months.
Right.
We rehearsed our film for 4 months on Broadway. We shot it in 4.5 days. What? Yeah. It was pretty insane.
Yeah, but you guys already knew your lines.
It's true. It's true. It's very true. The most magical thing about it was that, we divided the play into 3 acts and kind of shot an act a day, but we would have these 20-minute takes. And so to watch like a boom operator and a Steadicam operator maintain focus, honestly, and the devotion and focus to kind of be in this dance with us in like a deep level of concentration and just hold space in that physical endurance for 20 minutes at a time. It was extraordinary. It was like we had this dance of 4 people that we then had to add another 6 people to, and it was really special. Yeah.
Wow. So I guess the follow-up is, is that a model you would recommend or you would do again for other
No,
shows
my big
on
nightmare
Broadway?
was I was like, nobody can see these call sheets. Like, if any studio knows that we could shoot 20 pages a day, we're screwed. Like, we cannot let anybody see this.
Right.
But I think for the theater model, again, it's true. There is something about knowing your lines and knowing where your body's going to be and knowing the absolute specificity, as close to the bone as possible, who your character is and why they're going where they're going and saying what they're saying. Having done it over 130 times, I think then it is a model, a way to do that. But also, the whole story takes place in one room, so it's one location.
Sure. There are things that, in addition to that you can do with indies that I don't think you would ever, or you would have a much harder time doing with studio films, rightly or not. And I want to start with Alfre, Kerry, and Cynthia, because there haven't been many studio films with black female leads, unfortunately. And Alfre, you said recently, quote, "Through the years we got told in these words, well, we can't have a black woman be the lead of a film," close quote. Or actually, then you say we got told that as late as, 8 years ago, close quote. Do you find that is there a reason why indies would be more embracing of not just diversity, but also gender inclusion in the way that your films obviously, showcase it?
Now or then?
Take it however you.
Okay. I think the great thing about doing an independent film is it's just closer to the storyteller, to the filmmaker. The people come there, your crew is committed. They tend to be people that love the process, that's why they're in it, rather than they've approached it for a big lifestyle of some sorts. And so if you don't have so many people saying what the film is about and how it's going to happen, then people sort of listen to their own creative intelligence quicker. They trust it more. Nobody's money is on the line. They're not having to explain why, or it's saying to you when you say, we're going to do the Sojourner Truth story, and they say, okay, who's the young white guy in it? That's true. And you go, like, there isn't one. Like, can we make one? Can we, we'll put one in there. It doesn't matter if it's historically correct. So people are just braver because they, it's like when you're cooking, the less money you have, sometimes the better your food's gonna taste because you pay attention to it more and you know what to put in there and how to bend the recipes. So I think that's the way it is with independent film.
And the three of you have also come up through theater originally, and it seems like that's always ahead of the curve in terms of inclusion, and right. And I think Kerry certainly, obviously, this is a direct theater to film production, but I mean, maybe you can talk about just theater versus screen generally in terms of how receptive they are to thinking outside the box.
No, I mean, I think the pressure is always there. I think what it comes down to is fear around finances. And, and I think it happens in theater. For me, part of why I wanted to do this play was because I don't think that we always do a great job with diverse voices in the theater. But I about 15 years ago when DVDs happened and like the margins crashed in filmmaking, there became, the decision on the part of the studio was we cannot mess around in that $20 million range. We can't make movies there because the ROI just is not productive enough. So the fear around finances says, let's make something that's for the biggest common denominator. Let's let go of specificity and try to cater to everyone. Now the myth there is somehow that in order to cater for everyone, your star has to be a straight, white, cisgender male. Rather than, like, in whatever specificity, if we get to the humanity, everybody will be invited into the room and will love the project. But I think when the studios started to back out of that $20 million range, thank God that indies were there to say, we're still gonna play there, we're still gonna explore, we're still gonna look for stories that create connection between human beings. And I love a Marvel movie like anybody else, but I think that as much as tentpoles are important, so are films like Waves and
Right on,
Farewell
Scorsese,
and
good
Harriet.
stuff.
That's true. Do you want to add anything to that, Cynthia? Or
No, I think that the wonderful thing about theatre is that it's set in the suspense of belief anyway. And I mean, I come from musicals, so the idea is that you're in the middle of a sentence and you burst into song. That is as suspenseful as you can get. But it means that you have to play in the odd and the strange, and we definitely still have work to do on theatre stages, but because you're already in that space, you can take the risk anyway. Like, that's just what has to happen, and more people want to see things that are just different. That's the point of going to theatre. If you can see what you see everywhere else, why pay that amount of money to sit in a seat in a room and watch people on stage? And so I think that hopefully will start bleeding over more. Thank goodness for indies for allowing us to do those kinds of things, but I hope that it starts to be expanding.
Yeah.
I think
Scott,
it's
could I
necessary.
just sorry.
please.
I just wanted to say, the times that it has happened in the past, and those films like Joy Luck Club, like Waiting to Exhale, and others, when they did happen, it was looked on as an aberration. You'd go back to the people with the money and say, look at, everybody wanted to see these women do this. And they would just say, oh, well, that was an aberration. One of the things that changed, and they used to actually say it was the Germans and the Japanese didn't want black product. And black product was anything with 2 black people and 20 white people, it was a black product. And so they said that to us, but that was back when there was a mogul and you couldn't even get to go see the casting person unless an agent sent you, so everybody spent their time trying to get an agent. And so there were these gates that were locked, and it was mysterious how things got made. The democratization that you talk about of content and the what do you call it, the platform, how to get it there. Netflix, you know, and I'm not hyping them over anybody else because I work for all of them, but but they have blown that out of the water where, you know, I want to see a picture about, you know, young people scampering around in the summertime, scantily dressed, getting freaked out, you know, as much as anybody else does. So all of that to say,
Scampering, yeah.
Thanks.
That's a weird description of the report, but okay.
I thought she was talking about me, to be honest.
so there is, I mean, we have to keep putting films on large screens. I'm so on about that. But for everybody that can't get to a large screen, there's ways to bring cinema to them, and there's ways to get all of our cinema, all of their cinema, all their stories around, and we all want to see each other's stories.
Well, and John, for a lot of people, the frustration of studio films today is that they don't do what, as recently as the 70s, let's say, with the Pakula political movies, All the President's Men, 3 Days of the Condor, those kinds of movies, where they treated the audience intelligently. It wasn't catering to the sort of, it wasn't assuming that an audience couldn't be challenged. I think the thing about the report that a lot of people love is that it does that. I mean, the Hollywood Reporter's review of it called it, quote, pornography for policy wonks, close quote. And I mean, it's a lot more than that. It's a lot more than that. But I mean, in the same way that people responded, I think TV is in some ways picked up the mantle, you know, prestige TV like Mad Men from those 70s films. But it seems like if you want to get that in a movie theater, it's got to be at an indie.
Well, I mean, both Kerry and Alfre just said it perfectly. You know, the studios are out of that game. They don't make enough money on it. They make money by pushing all the chips in the middle of the table and hopefully doubling down. It's just gone. But as Alfre said too, there's now this incredible democratization of getting product out, not just of the massive explosion in the amount of content, but there's a way now that you don't have to be beholden to one of 5 studio lots around here. You can make your own movie and you can get it and you can sell it to Netflix for a decent amount of money, or you can sell it to any other streaming platform, or you can put it on Vimeo and people will see it. I mean, there's a million different ways to get a million different kinds of content out. And so I think for creators of content, for actors, for directors, for crew members, it's an amazing time because you can work on anything you want to work on. And you have the freedom to tell your own story. I think that's what we're really seeing. And to Alfre's point again, like this idea that that because something hits that's out of the box or different and it's treated as an aberration, it's so backwards and ridiculous that, you know, there's Tyler Perry didn't make $1 billion on an aberration. There's an audience there. There's an audience for so many different kinds of stories, and to focus on just one is ridiculous. And so as soon as we start opening up the lens to different voices and to different perspectives, you start seeing that builds on itself. And oh my God, we can tell stories about gender fluidity. We can tell stories about different racial makeups and backgrounds and things like that, because there are people that they don't have to identify with it from a first-person perspective, but there's a humanity there that everybody identifies with. You know, it's just simple. We're all human beings.
I think also, Sterling, maybe one of the nice things about indie filmmaking and just there's less pressure to conform, not only in casting or other things, but even in the way you tell a story. I don't think since Psycho we've seen a studio film kill off a principal character midway through a movie. That's just not, people don't, you're not seeing that kind of daring happening there. But here you guys do it, and it's an incredible thing that changed.
Spoiler alert.
No, he's
spoiled. Did you just spoil?
I didn't say kill. It's not killing off. It's not. I don't know what I said, but it's not.
Yeah, I got you, Scott.
Yeah.
I got you, big dog. Ain't kill nobody off. The film does switch protagonist halfway through.
That's what I mean.
And so it is my son's movie, Taylor, played by Kelvin Harrison Jr. in the first half of the movie, and then my daughter becomes the protagonist of the second half, Emily, played by Taylor Russell in the second half of the film. And it is interesting, like you don't see that in storytelling at all. Like, how do I just stop midway with this one character and then pick up and continue along with somebody else? And it's something that Trey Edward Schultz, our director, had in mind from the beginning. He said in order for the story to be complete, you have to see how the family reaches this point of crisis, but now you have to see how the family, through someone else's eyes, is able to put the pieces back together again. Yeah, I would wager a studio heard this pitch, they'd be like, wait, what? You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, it's just like Game of Thrones style, like Ned Stark is, but it's a really interesting way of showing multi-dimensions of one family story through different perspectives. And when I read it, I was like, oh snap. I was like, can you do that? I didn't know that was allowed myself too. And then I read it through to the end and I was like, it wouldn't have been right. Like, there's something about the story itself. If you stop midway through, like, you're not getting the full picture. Like, it has to be her story now. Just because. I don't want to say too much about it. Scott already got killing people off and stuff, man.
Jimmie, in your film, there are a lot of people who are not professional actors. And I
including
wonder if you
myself.
well, now you are.
Now you are.
Fooled us. Yeah. There you go.
So just in terms of what that brings to a project, which I don't think is going to be allowed necessarily in too many studio films with prominent parts, why talk about the the authenticity that brought to the story you were trying to tell?
Well, you know, we're making a movie about San Francisco, so it's important that we had San Franciscans in the movie, and people, you know, all the people on the set were from the Bay Area and local, because it wouldn't have felt real. You know, I was talking to Sterling earlier about how when they usually shoot things in San Francisco, they don't show the side of the city that, you know, natives are actually at. You know, they're blowing up the Golden Gate Bridge or whatever it is, you know. So we just wanted to, you know, show the side of San Francisco that's not on the postcards, basically. You know, the side of San Francisco that we saw, and we, you know, we're not gonna fly in people from LA to act like they're from San Francisco. That wasn't gonna happen. So, you know, yeah, we had to, you know, yeah. No offense to LA.
It's all good. You already said it now. You can't take it back.
Aquafina, how about subtitled? You're not going to see too many, you know, I guess, yeah, I'm trying to think, with Crazy Rich Asians, was there even with that, what percentage would we have seen in subtitled?
In subtitles and Crazy
Yeah,
Rich
yeah.
Asians, not a lot.
Not a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, the great thing about Crazy Rich Asians was that so many people saw it, I think, and exposed cultures inside of the world that maybe many of them had not known. But I think to actually do a large portion of your film in Chinese, there's some value to be said for that, right? And a real, again, a more not comparing and contrasting, but just an authenticity that brings that you might not have been able to do in a studio film, right?
Yeah, I mean, The Farewell is it's a very specific movie that really you don't see a lot, which is an American movie, largely in Chinese, and the fact that, you know, that you just don't see that a lot. Yeah, as for my Chinese, it was just bad. I don't know what you're talking. I don't. No, my Chinese in it, I think that there was a comfort to speaking bad Chinese, because I think that for a lot of people, that's literally how we have to get on with how we communicate with our relatives that live like overseas or whatever. But yeah, I think for sure it brings an authenticity. Yeah.
Florence, can you talk about, let's say, just the pacing of telling the story and shooting the film, let's say with MIDSOMMAR versus even Little Women, which is, I've seen, it's fantastic, but you guys had a lot more, I would imagine, tools and days to work with. Just MIDSOMMAR, part of the thing that's so cool about it and that builds the dread that we all feel throughout it is that it is very deliberately paced. I wonder if you can just talk about that.
The shoot wasn't that. It was totally nuts. We shot, I think, for about 2.5 months, and bless Ari, he was dealing with possibly 100 and 120 people, additional extras and actors there, all speaking in 3 different languages, and he was the captain of the ship. And I think he'll say that it was very stressful. But yeah, the pacing about it, when you watch it, you wouldn't imagine that we were racing through the day because the sun had changed 5 times in between one take. So I take my hat off to him, to what he made and what you see. It was a big project to do in that amount of time, and that's part of the reason why they filmed in Budapest, was to kind of feel out the budget for those reasons. And we got it done, but it was, as you can imagine, totally exhausting. And yet you watch it and it's very perfectly paced, and you're like, you have no idea how much we were rushing that day. But yeah, that's the magic of making big, tiny films.
Yeah. Alfre, this is it. I am very carefully thinking about my words so that I don't have any spoilers here. But I think that in studio films, there's a pressure to, I mean, we can generally see the ending a mile away. You know that the guy's gonna get the girl, or vice versa. The, hero's there's gonna be some triumph. It's all pretty formulaic. Without saying anything specifically about how your film ends, it is something that has provoked. I've seen a million people come up to you with different theories about what it means and what they think and all of that. That's kind of a cool thing in terms of storytelling that you just can't do. Like it's on a larger with studio pressure around you. What's the? I would assume you think that's got some value.
It does. It was one of the reasons that I wanted to go to work with Chinoya, was she told me her influences, her cinematic influences. And sorry, there are 3 people, I know their names, but I can't think of their names. But they had a pacing sensibility that we would, give it to the Europeans and says it's European, but also how things fell out, how the story fell out. We discovered the end of the film while shooting. It was never written. She didn't know it. We didn't talk about it. On the day, in the moment, she said, this is going to happen, and then we just all did what she said. But that was a way of working that I liked. I like working with, when I say an auteur, there's directors, there's filmmakers, and then there's auteurs. That I don't even, what I mean by that is you're still in a mode of discovery. No matter what you've told your finance people, what you've even told your actors, that's why you show up. It's somebody to say, put me in, coach. Okay, you go long, you cut it off here. There's some sport I just made
Football.
up.
Yeah, no, I got you. I see it.
You're gonna do the wishbone and then.
Yeah, wishbone. That's football too. Yeah.
Okay. So it is what happens. Our film, I play a death row warden. So you can kind of guess some of the things that happen there. I think what's unexpected is the point of view. Whenever we're working, our job is to always give the viewer a chance to look out from the eyes of the human being that we're bringing to life. And so there's a lot of surprises, although the pacing is not, you talk, cut as people speak, because we understand that real life happens in between the lines. It's our intention, so it's more interesting watching people receive something on camera than it is to give or say something. So there's the pacing goes there, and it led us up to that moment. We knew what was needed in terms of the body of the story. We didn't know when it was going to come, and it happened upon us on that day at the end.
I want to start this next question with Kerry, but invite anyone else to weigh in who would like. I think that there's also, in studio films in particular, a pressure to make especially the female protagonists, quote unquote, likable. And you've talked about Kendra does not necessarily conform to that. And I think actually a number of the female characters up here, that's not a primary concern, and we get to therefore see a much more multi-dimensional person. That must, I would assume that's a draw for doing indies.
Yeah, I would argue that's true for all of these productions, that, again, I think when your motivation is making money, and there's nothing wrong with making money, it's great to make money, but when that is the value that supersedes all others, then you want your lead characters to be loved because you want everybody to like the material. And I think what a lot of indies strive for is not just aspiration, not just that you see the protagonist and you like them, but that you see the protagonist and in them you see yourself, because you see truth. And truth is not always likable. Sometimes our protagonists show us who we are, but it's the parts of us that we're having trouble reconciling with. Sometimes they show us who we want to be. Sometimes they show us who we don't want to be. And I felt like Kendra allowed me to reveal some truths about what it means to be a mother of Black children, what it means to be a woman. I'm also the only person in the film, not just the only woman in the film, not only the one of 2 Black people in the film, but I'm the only character without a badge. And so I think a lot of it is also about not having access to traditional power and trying to get it. And also for me, this was, I think, what was really important was what I love about Kendra is how angry she is. Because I don't feel like we have had a lot of models for female anger, and specifically not black female anger, women of color being allowed to be angry. And it during our rehearsal process was when that incredible match happened with Serena Williams, where she got so angry, and I had all these pictures of her in my dressing room because it was this righteous, justified anger that the world could not seem to make room for. And I was like, we're gonna make room for it in this. We're gonna make room for that anger that is allowed. Because if I'm not allowed to be angry as a black woman, I'm not allowed to be human. And I need to be able to be all of my colors. I want you to want to be me, like Olivia Pope, sure, that's great. But you also need to know that I have an underbelly, I have a shadow, I have fear, I have, if you cut me, there is blood. I need to be fully human in the canon in order for us to all know that we're the same.
Absolutely. And would anyone else like to add anything to that before we go to the next question? No?
I'll say one thing, because it is interesting. Like, oftentimes, people will see Waves and they'll be like, "Oh, I hated you so much in that movie." I'm like, "Thank you so much. It means the world to me." Because I think at the end of the day, on a more general level, but very specifically, I appreciate your point, is that the goal of the actor is not to be liked per se, but to be understood. You know what I'm saying? If you can understand where that person is coming from and why they do what they do, then we've done our job. Whether you like us or you don't like us, that's up to individual interpretation, but to be understood is the goal.
So this next question is, I want you to kind of pretend you've taken truth serum. Give us some honesty here. When you are thinking about your career planning, when you're meeting with your agents or managers or whoever, how much of a discussion is it when you want to do an indie versus in terms of how you want to structure your career plan? I mean, there's the famous, I think it was Clooney, like, I do one for me, one for them, or maybe it's for most people it can't be quite a one for one, but I guess I just wonder, do you just literally respond to material and say, this is what I'm going to do, or what sort of a calculation is there about, is this responsible for building a career? Maybe Aquafina, can you start?
You know, for me and my I think that, you know, it's you know, you told us to drink truth serum, and this is really the truth, is that if the story and the role is good, it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. There's not a conversation that, well, you know, this one's it's just who what's the vision? Is the role right for me? Yeah, and I think when it comes to indies, it's not a question. It's not, I'm not going to do that because it's an indie. It's always like, you know, I'll welcome them in, you know. Yeah.
May I?
Please.
For me, truthfully, when I look at a script, it is, while I want it to be enough for the script to be great and the story to be good, I am desperately making sure and looking for characters that are fully rounded, because I'm playing them. My face is going to be the face of this character, which means a black woman is going to be the face of this character. And I know that there are other young black women who are looking at this film and will be seeing themselves. So I can't help but make it my responsibility to make sure that whichever role I play is three-dimensional, because too often we get two-dimensional characters who don't have a full human life. That is what I look for when I pick a film, indie or not. If it doesn't have that, then I can't do it, because I don't want to represent other women of color in any other way than 3D. That's what it is for me.
Yeah. Sterling, when This Is Us first hit, I imagine you had a influx for the first time of options. How did you approach it? Maybe not for the first.
No, that's about right. That's about right. Brian was sitting there waiting for crumbs from the table of joy, like, please, sir, may I have some more? For me, the interesting thing, I do a network television show that nobody else does. That was, and I happen to be up on the stage, which is really cool. But the thing that I get to do, or that I actively try to do, is to find something very different than Randall. Because, like, people would hit me up on Twitter and be like, Randall, why you betrayed Wakanda? And I'm like, I'm not Randall, dadgummit. I'm in Jobu. So I do actively try to expand the box because I'm in a really unique and wonderful situation where I've been allowed the opportunity to go back and forth between film and television, whereas it just seemed to be one or the other. You had to pick a lane. And so I'm about trying to expand the box that folks want to put you in until hopefully the edges sort of disappear.
Alfre, you've been doing this probably, I think, longer than anyone else up here. You've seen a lot of change in this business.
You were trying to say more than anybody if you're combined.
No.
No.
Scott is having a hard time today.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, but I mean, what's your read on that situation in terms of how what are you looking for? Will you do? I mean, you're right now on Apple TV Plus. Just jumping between all over the place. How do you decide what you want to do?
I have to tell you this first. When I told my father that I wanted to be an actor and he was paying money at BU for me to get an acting degree, he said, "Babe, I didn't even know they gave you degrees and that kind of thing." I said, yeah, they do. He said, I don't know anything about that business, but I hear people never make money at it. I said, no, they don't. He said, you're not going to be able to keep yourself the way I've been keeping you. I said, I know. He said, you might end up eating beans the rest of your life. And I didn't like beans at that point. I really did. And I had tears in my eyes. And I said, Dad, I'm ready to eat beans. And the thing was, I never knew you could make money acting. I was introduced to film through a Christian brother and acting through a nun, and a long story. But I never knew you could make money. I never equated it, so I never asked for the money. And I've had the good luck. I had a couple of tawdry, awful years when I first came, but I've had the good fortune that the universe put people in front of me who believed in me, who got me. I can tell you some awful things that have been said to me in offices in town, and sometimes by people who like me, just the awful things. But the people that were representing me, they were taking the slings and arrows of trying to get people to hire me for stuff, but they knew that I always went for the story. I went for the script. So it could be, some of my best work I've done on a whole script, a whole budget of $30K. Then I've got one I love that was a $250K. And so that's probably why I don't have a whole bunch of money right now, but I've had people looking out for me so that all of us, the reps and me, we sleep well at night. So you follow the story, whether it's on TV, whether it is at, for your kids' school program, because I think as an artist, everything you need when you are actually putting your story, not for yourself, but the story to go to the people, you get taken care of. And so suddenly somebody say, you know what, Sterling? Come, I'm gonna give you a whole bunch of money to do this character. John, I'll give you this. So how can we not, when a young filmmaker comes and said, I got this great idea, I only have $40,000, we say, come on, let's do it.
I guess it would also be interesting, Jimmie, like right now, a lot of people are discovering you for the first time. Is there something you're itching to do specifically?
Yeah, I want to play a bad guy, honestly.
Yeah.
That's what I want to do. Because I kind of just tripped and fell into this acting thing, but I'm pretty picky about, what's being sent to me, because I do want to be taken seriously, and I do, I want to look back on everything that I do and be proud of it. So, yeah, I'm picky, but I'm open to whatever.
Yep. Florence, you had a busy period of time since Lady Macbeth. If the next thing was Marvel or Star Wars, you could snap your fingers and make anything happen next, what would it be?
I've always wanted to do a Western.
Really?
Yeah. That I've ever since I was tiny, I've always wanted to have grit in my teeth and grease in my eyebrows and a big wax skirt that crunches. I've just wanted to be dirty, essentially, on camera. I love it when you get to be dirty in a scene because you're like, great, now I don't have to worry about anything and I can just be gross. But I think that for me, that's definitely how I pick roles as well. I have to want to be this person for 3 months. I have to want to fight her battles. I have to protect her. I have to think like her. And ultimately, what is this saying? And who is this going to be? How is this going to be received? And I think for me as a kid, watching women in all shapes and sizes, the ones that I was always attracted to were the weird ones, or they were dirty, or they ran away with someone, or they killed someone, or like they had a weird party trick. I was just always fascinated by fascinating people. And I think as an actor, I wouldn't be able to do what I do if I didn't do the same.
John, coming off of Mad Men, was there something you would not, was it like, I'm not gonna do TV next, or I'm not, like, do you have any things that you rule out?
No, but not dissimilar to Sterling's experience. As soon as something like hits the way This Is Us or Mad Men does, then everybody wants, like, well, don't you want to do that 5 more times? And my response was, no, I don't. Here's 10 scripts. Everybody's wearing a hat and smoking and drinking, and it's in black and white, and okay. So my decision was very conscious to sort of swing the other way. And for me, that was just to look into more things that were funny. It's not that Mad Men wasn't funny, it was just funny in its own way. But to be able to go like host SNL or do Bridesmaids or 30 Rock or whatever, I was happy to be able to do that and therefore kind of gain some sort of credibility on both sides of the comedy drama aisle. And that opened up a lot of more fun things to do, you know, whether it's in an independent world or a studio world. It's like, I think everybody has said a version of it's you respond to the story, you respond to the script, you respond to the character, and then in my case, the next question I ask is Matt Damon not available? In which case, maybe I'll have a shot. But it's you have my guiding principle at this point, and I'm really not fortunate enough to be able to walk in and say, I want to do this, this, and this, make it happen. But I look at people when I get offers to do things that, okay, well, who's attached to it, and do they scare me in some way? Do I think they're better than me? I mean, the idea of playing tennis against someone that's never played tennis is not going to make you a better tennis player. It's really not going to be good for either one of you. But so it's ideally you want to play with people at a level that you can be intrigued or scared or inspired by. And I've really been fortunate to, like Jimmie was saying, look back on my career and say, I'm proud of every single thing I did, including tag. Yeah, including tag.
Love tag. Love tag.
Yes. Yes.
You know what? Underrated.
Yes.
Tag 2. Tag
Cynthia's
2.
a fan.
Cynthia liked it.
Well, our last topic that I'd like to bring up is just the importance of film festivals and getting your stuff out to the world. In fact, I think every film represented here, except MIDSOMMAR, went through some part of the film festival circuit. And so I want to actually just note, Aquafina, Sundance was where you guys began with The Farewell. And I think it really, you've said before to me that it held a sort of special place in your imagination growing up, right?
Yeah. I worked at an independent video store in the West Village when I was 16 years old, and everyone would always talk about Sundance. Well, it was in Sundance, and I'm like, oh, that's tight. So, yeah, I always saw it as this kind of like mystical place where like Robert Redford is there, and it's great because it's his festival, right? Why is like okay? He's a yeah, and then you know we and then The Farewell opened, and just to give some context, like we really did not know where The Farewell would go. It was something that, you know, a movie like it hadn't existed on the market. It was my first lead. We had no idea how that would go, and yeah, to just see it open at Eccles, and to an audience that was audibly crying, audibly laughing, and gasping. I mean, that was an experience that, unlike any other. Yeah.
Alfre, you were also there with Clemency, which won the U.S. Grand Jury Prize Dramatic competition. I think you've had several films there, and certainly at all the different festivals. And I wonder
Over the years.
over the years. No, but I mean, you can speak to the fact that it's important to launching, especially these maybe movies that don't have a massive budget for marketing and publicity, right?
Yeah, it's our conduit to the people. If independent films don't have festivals, there's no way to get to the people in Des Moines and the people in Macon and everywhere that we want to get our stories to. And the really cool thing about festivals for me is that I love films, and that's why I got into them. And so to go somewhere where everybody there loves films, so they speak the language and can talk about things, you just watch films forever. It's like a big homecoming to be at a festival, no matter what that festival is, where in the world, how small, or even if it's I would go to a festival about things that if the films were about a subject that I was not interested in, because that's how I feel about festivals. I know there's the practical thing of getting distribution. It's changing a little now, but it's a place where we all speak the same language. And the people that come to festivals they can help us first talk about the movies, and everybody loves to stay up late, talk about the movies, eating and drinking and whatever they want to do. But it also is a way for us to get language of them to translate what they've seen to their friends, their relatives, the people in their state that we don't know how to speak to those people. Not only not have access, we don't speak the civilian language of those people, where they'd say, oh no, you gotta see The Farewell. That's what we need, is for people that come to festivals say, oh no, you got to see the report, because they don't get it from looking at our little tiny advertisements and wherever we put them.
And they're also often incubators for talent. I mean, Jimmie, you said, I think, was it 2 years before the feature went to Sundance and won special jury and directing awards, you guys were there with the short, right?
Mm-hmm. We didn't win anything.
No,
but we were there. Yeah, we were there.
But I mean, so what was was there feedback from the festival when you took the short there that shaped the way you guys went about with doing the feature?
Yeah, I mean, that's where we, met Plan B and stuff, and I think it was like a taste of what type of filmmaking that we do and what we had to offer and how we tell stories. So I think, I think it was very helpful. I mean, it was cool to just be in that environment, and that's one of the best festivals, so.
And John, the report started there too, right? Is that what?
Yeah, we started in Sundance. We went to Telluride, and we showed in Toronto as well. Just to kind of piggyback on what everybody's saying, the great thing about festivals, and I encourage anybody here that hasn't gone, and it's not just Sundance, there's South by is amazing, there's a million of them, Telluride's awesome. Go. You get to see cool shit early. And you can brag, and you can say like, oh, I saw that, yeah, I saw that at whatever, and you can hold it over your friends' heads. I mean, I've had the very good fortune to have quite a few movies come through Sundance. I've been on the jury at Sundance, and I've gotten to see an astonishing amount of talent come through that. A lot of which was sort of homegrown at the Sundance Lab, which is now in its 20-some-odd year, maybe 20th year, I'm not sure. But that is our community as entertainers and as filmmakers and as directors and producers and actors and everybody. So to kind of distance yourself from that is ridiculous. The other amazing part of Sundance in particular, but most festivals, is everybody's there. Most of the people that are there are volunteering. They just like being around it. And so I would suggest that to anybody in the room that wants to be a filmmaker, that wants to be in this industry, that go to a festival and really engage in that community, because it's relatively inexpensive. I mean, you can drive to Utah, and it's cool, and it's fun, and it's really kind of seeing a part of the industry that is vital to the organic growth of the industry.
Florence, had you had a taste of it before Fighting with My Family was at Sundance, or I'm trying to remember where Lady Macbeth started?
Yes, Lady Macbeth went to Sundance as well. And I just remember on both films, the most magic that you get from it is it's the first time that you're allowed to feel proud, I think, of your film that you've taken, and the fact that it even got made was a massive deal. But now you're going to hear what people think for the first time, and it's a very unique moment in the, I suppose, birth of the film is that, and I've managed to witness it twice, which is pretty special. But yeah, you can sit there and hear what people are saying and feel a lot of pride for the project that you've all created together. And because you hope everyone is there, it's a nice ticking of the box.
John mentioned Telluride. That's where Waves started. Sterling, you were there.
Yeah.
And it is quite an experience, right?
It was absolutely gorgeous. It was my first time going to Telluride. You have to ride a lift up to some of the screenings, and I remember going home at night. This has nothing to do with movies. This is just like Brown's like personal anecdote.
Yeah.
Like riding the lift at night, it's like 1 o'clock in the morning, and there's no audio visual disturbance of stars. And like you're at about 10,000 feet, and you feel like you can touch them, and there's no sound, and there's no light to pollute it, and it's just, for me, to be surrounded by beauty. And I think people go to festivals for different reasons. There's the nature aspect of Telluride, which is gorgeous, but like everyone has said, it's full of cinephiles, like people who really, really enjoy cinema, who enjoy a story well told, uniquely, diversely, and they want to talk about it. And so we're dependent upon it for word of mouth, because budgets may vary in terms of like how you put something out there. So folks, if you like it, you see it, you speak about it, and then other people come and check it out too. I just want to say one other thing, and this is for Jimmie, because we were talking earlier. It's cool, bruh. And he says, like, I feel, yeah, man. He's like, man, I just feel it's like a bunch of famous people. It's pretty cool. And I was like, yeah, famous people, like, I get giddy all the time. I was like, Olivia Pope sitting right next to me. I get real excited about this stuff. And so my first festival was Sundance, and I did a movie called Our Idiot Brother, right? And I flew myself there because the budget for the studio, there was no budget for me. And it was just like, go take the picture, right? So I went with the cast, and Paul Rudd was the lead of the movie. It was so sweet. And we were about to do our first interview, and I was like, don't nobody want to talk to me. I'm the brother who had like a couple funny lines. I was like, I should go. I felt really uncomfortable. And Rudd said, he's like, hey man, if you're uncomfortable, I understand it, but it's not that big of a deal. You should probably just come in and then get it over with. And like I called my manager, and I was like, I don't know if I should do this. And I don't know if I got her on the phone or not, but I decided to go in. I did the interview. They didn't ask me too many questions, but they allowed me a couple, and then the people who interviewed me were like, thank you for coming, here's a gift, whatever, and I got like AMC movie tickets for the year, and I was like, there's swag? Oh, the fear was over. Swag, just go for the swag. Thank you.
Yeah. Cynthia, I think 2 years in a row, Toronto Film Festival for you, Widows, and now this, and just that one is a very different vibe than Telluride or Sundance. It's a I think 300 movie lineup, big red carpets, huge theaters. But you come out of there knowing how people. There's no faking it as far as like what people thought of your movie, right?
Yeah. I guess for me, doing Toronto twice was like a real full circle moment, because the first time I did Toronto was my very first movie, and then and I was like number 4, like, or something, like no one really knew who I was, and I was just pleased to be a part of it, to be honest. I mean, Viola Davis was in it, so I was like, all right, let's just be it. It's fine. And then to then come back with Harriet was just a full circle moment, and to be at that festival where people really do love film. They love film, and they want to be there, and you get to be in and amongst the people of Toronto and your peers, people that you don't get to see for most of the year, and and you audibly can tell what is happening with your film in the audience. I think I sat there with my shoulders up by my ears for like half of the movie, and I remember thinking, it's okay, Cynthia, it's okay, Cynthia, drop your shoulders. Okay, I dropped my shoulders. And I had Leslie Odom Jr. behind me, and he went, rub my shoulders, it's fine, fine. But to have that experience of knowing whether people feel your movie, feel you in it, is really wonderful, because that's sort of the first taste test that your movie can get. And I enjoyed it a lot. I love festivals.
Yeah.
I'd go to all of them if I could. Yeah.
And it's interesting, by the way, Telluride, there are certain people that go even, I'm sure it's for other festivals too, but every year, Alexander Payne, Laura Linney, whether they have a movie or not, I think part of that is with that one, is what the way Clooney described it. He went with Descendants 2011.
Yeah.
And he says the first time he's been able to just walk around and not be bothered in years, because the only people that are going to pay that much money to go to Telluride, which is not an inexpensive one, or travel that far or whatever, they're there for the movies. They love movies. And so anyway, and then I want to just close this topic with Kerry, because you took a project that started in the theater and was headed to Netflix, which people may associate with TV, but in this case it's a film at a film festival, Toronto again, with American Son, again, a year to the day after the rehearsal started. That was a pretty celebratory evening.
It was. Is there a question?
The question is, you were there with Ray. You've been going for
was.
years. So
I
what's your thoughts on
It was
Toronto?
actually really fun that I had been there. The first time I went to Toronto was with Ray, and Jamie was also at Toronto this year with Just
Right.
Mercy. And so when we ran into each other at the festival, there was a lot of tears and hugging, just for like the journey of the last 15 years. But I'm so indebted to film festivals for all of the reasons that everyone else has said. I mean, the very first film I ever did, Our Song, was a film that came up through Sundance, premiered at Sundance. The first time I was ever #1 on a call sheet was a film called Lift that also premiered at Sundance. I think film festivals are so exciting because I think in a lot of ways, what we've been talking about, the focus can be elsewhere in this business of making movies, but film festivals are about story, and they're about loving film. And so we get to be, I think we get to feel like real artisans, not just artists, but like workers in a craft that we love in a community that appreciates that craft. So I'm really grateful. And also there's nothing like making a movie and then somebody calling you and you realize you can put that little wreath, that little white wreath that says you were at a festival on your poster. Like, it means something, you know, whether it's AFI or Sundance or Toronto, you know, there is real affirmation that comes to us as artists, as what we do, when you guys allow us to be a part of your agenda. So we're all very grateful that AFI, that all of these festivals, that you give us a place to live outside of the studio system that allows us to move into the world with audiences and with awareness, and we're very grateful. So thank you for having us here at AFI. And yes,
Yeah.
festivals.
Thank
yes.
you for coming to this festival. Thank you all. See these movies. They're great. Thank you.